I've got a fistful of fact here about Red Dead Redemption that might interest you. Everything you could ever want to know about it. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Forgive me for the Western references, there's gonna be a lot of them to come. This is the magnificent 107 facts about Red Dead Redemption. Number 1. The idea for Red Dead Redemption first started out as a spiritual successor to the 2004 game Red Dead Revolver. The roots of the Red Dead series as we know it are based in that first game. Number 2. Before Rockstar came into the picture, Red Dead Revolver was originally developed by Angel Studios under Capcom, starting in 2000. Number 3. In November 2002, Angel Studios was bought from Capcom by Rockstar's parent company Take-Two, and swiftly rebranded as Rockstar San Diego. Number 4. About a year later, in December 2003, Rockstar and Take-Two also acquired the rights to Red Dead Revolver from Capcom after the game had been effectively cancelled. Rockstar wanted their own Western game, and saw Revolver as a solid starting foundation. Number 5. Over the course of 9 months, Rockstar San Diego brought Red Dead back to life, completing the game and releasing it under Rockstar's publication in May of 2004. Number 6. Well, Red Dead Revolver came out to middling reviews. Not satisfied, Rockstar set out to make their own Western game from scratch, one that truly felt like a Rockstar game at its core. Number 7. Specifically, Rockstar set out to make this would-be Western game in the style of their GTA series that the company was famous for. They had already proven that they could apply the open-world format to different environments, like a school with the game Bully, which was in development at the time, so they decided to try their hand at an open-world Western. Number 8. They couldn't just jump right in though, they needed to bide their time. Rockstar knew that the currently available hardware couldn't handle their version of the game, so they waited until they could develop for 7th generation consoles, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Number 9. It's not like they just sat on their hands though. Preliminary work on Red Dead Redemption started in 2005. A small team at Rockstar San Diego was tasked with putting together a rough PS3 teaser to form some buzz. Number 10. This early footage was first shown for 2005's Sony E3 presentation. This was the first glimpse of what would become Red Dead Redemption. At the time, the game was not even named. Number 11. So while E3 planted the seed, Rockstar San Diego properly started development on Red Dead Redemption in 2006, after they had assembled a completed team of core developers. Number 12. This core team was led by lead designer and co-writer on Red Dead Redemption, Christian Cantamessa. He wrote the game's narrative alongside Michael Unsworth and Rockstar veteran Dan Houser. Number 13. Other staff on Red Dead Redemption included Ted Carson as technical director and Josh Bass and Darren Bader as art directors. All three had also worked on Red Dead Revolver. Number 14. In total, the core team at Rockstar San Diego working on Red Dead Redemption was composed of 180 people. Number 15. Rockstar San Diego also got some help though. Other Rockstar studios were brought in to work on Red Dead Redemption, such as Rockstar Leeds, New England, Toronto, and Rockstar North, based in Edinburgh, Scotland. Number 16. With all of these other studios in the mix, this brought the total number of developers up to more than 1,000 for the game. Number 17. Not all hands on deck were particularly excited though. Rockstar New England was originally working on a sequel to Bully, but their project was put on hold to focus efforts on Red Dead Redemption. To this day, Bully 2 has never been finished. Number 18. Also, the Rockstar New England branch was forced into crunch. For months, the devs regularly worked 12 to 16-hour days, including nights and weekends. Number 19. Even worse, 10% of the Rockstar New England staff was laid off in June 2009, less than a year before Red Dead Redemption's release. The laid-off staff never received bonuses for their work on the game, or even a copy of the game itself. Number 20. Crunch in general was a problem that plagued Red Dead Redemption's development. Things got so bad that the wives of Rockstar's San Diego devs published an open letter about it. Number 21. Written under the name Rockstar Spouse, the letter was published in January 2010 and alleged abusive work practices starting from March 2009. Number 22. Specifically, the letter alleged unethical practices like 12-hour days for 6 days a week and salary increases that fell well below industry standards. Number 23. Accounts from former Rockstar San Diego employees eventually rolled out supporting these sentiments. Apparently things became so unbearable that some Rockstar San Diego employees quit rather than working on Red Dead Redemption. Number 24. Not long after the letter was published, Rockstar responded, denying the allegations and adding that they were saddened if any former members of the studio did not find their time here enjoyable or creatively fulfilling. Number 25. Within 2 months after Red Dead Redemption's release, Rockstar laid off 40 of the 180 people at Rockstar San Diego, a move they called typical with game development. Number 26. As for the game itself, Hauser, Unsworth, and Cantamessa completed the Red Dead Redemption script over the course of about 2 years. In total, the finished script came out to be about 1,500 pages. Number 27. While obviously Western inspired, the writers were specifically influenced by classic Western films The Wild Bunch, High Plains Drifter, Unforgiven, and more recently for the time, The Proposition. Number 28. They noticed most Westerns took place in the classic Old West era between 1840 and 1880, so they wanted to do something different. Red Dead Redemption is set in 1911. Number 29. The writers wanted to show the transformation from the Old West to the modern world. Cantamessa described the game as the death of the West instead of the myth of the West, as portrayed in traditional Western movies. Number 30. Hauser also felt that the dying Old West would serve as a more interesting time period. The setting would be the best of both worlds, the old-style horse and lassos of the typical Old West, as well as burgeoning industrialization like trains. Number 31. However, despite the obvious influence, Hauser was careful not to pull too much from Western films and put them directly in the game. He wanted the story to develop naturally, without feeling like a shoehorned series of Western references. Number 32. Tonally, Hauser wanted the game to feel more realistic and lean away from campiness, while citing Blazing Saddles as an example. The team wanted the game's violence to feel slightly raw and unpleasant, and not exaggerate it too much. Number 33. Also, the team made a point not to accurately depict period-accurate race relations. They were keen to avoid language that would be insanely offensive to modern ears. Number 34. To make the world feel immersive and alive, Rockstar San Diego gave NPCs schedules, with tasks to accomplish and locations to visit, rather than just doing the same thing over and over in one spot. Number 35. Also, they gave NPCs individual outfits and dialogue to keep things from becoming too repetitive for the player. Number 36. For locations, the team aimed to broaden visual horizons for the player as the game progressed, giving them a sense of variety to show the rapidly changing world that they were playing in. Number 37. To maintain this distinction, each location and province was given its own vibe. New Austin is dotted with tiny towns and outposts, the last bastion of what we consider the Old West to look like. Number 38. Nuevo Paraíso has a ton of rebel outposts and army forts that serve as tactical landmarks for the Mexican army. The region conveys a feeling of a land deep in the midst of a civil war. Number 39. Nuevo Paraíso was inspired by visuals from The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, a Western film from 1948. Number 40. As for West Elizabeth, the team considers it a vision of the future. The land is more verdant as a prosperous part of modern civilization, meant to contrast the dying backwaters of New Austin. Number 41. When researching for locations, Rockstar San Diego used movies, to be sure. However, they also did some real homework. The studio sent a team on field trips to Washington, D.C. to visit the Library of Congress and the National Archives building to see direct, first-hand photos of the American frontier. Number 42. Creating Red Dead Redemption's massive open world was certainly an accomplishment. Rockstar San Diego quickly ran into a new challenge. How did they keep this gigantic space interesting enough for players to explore? So they peppered the open world with random encounters. Number 43. The team initially considered adopting a GTA 4 style of an open world mission-based structure. However, they ended up going with an approach that flowed better within Red Dead's open world. Number 44. Also, to make the world feel more organic, Rockstar San Diego populated it with 40 different kinds of animals. Number 45. At first, the team felt like the animals were fake and noticed that groups of animals were gathering in the same places. Like with NPCs, Rockstar San Diego added rules and behaviors for the animals to keep the player experience more unpredictable. Number 46. Of course, animals were just the beginning. The world is loaded with characters too, about 450 in total. Of that, 50 would be considered main characters. Number 47. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that the most main of the main characters is John Marston. He's played by Rob Wiedoff. Number 48. When Wiedoff auditioned, he initially thought it was a waste of time. He was so nonchalant about the whole thing that he was even folding his laundry during his audition. Number 49. At the time, Wiedoff didn't even know what he was auditioning for. All of Red Dead Redemption's auditions were mysteriously labeled as untitled video game project to keep it a secret. Number 50. Sure enough, Wiedoff got the role a few days later. From there, he worked on the game over the course of about 2 years, including 6 weeks of principal production. Number 51. Wiedoff guesses that he and the Rockstar team filmed about 12 to 15 John Marston scenes a day. Number 52. The first scene Wiedoff filmed as the character was actually the one where John Marston meets Nigel West Dickens. Number 53. To help direct Wiedoff's performance, the crew would reference scenes and moments from Grand Theft Auto 4. Trouble was, Wiedoff had never played it. Nonetheless, he played it off as he had before eventually fessing up. Number 54. When creating John Marston, the writers didn't set out to write him as a hero or a villain, but a family man with his own ambivalent morals and goals. Carson said that Marston had a foot in both the old world and the world that was to come. Number 55. At the time of Red Dead Redemption's release, John Marston was the oldest playable Rockstar protagonist at 38 years old. He has since been passed by the likes of Michael and Trevor from GTA 5. Number 56. By that same metric, John's son, Jack Marston, who is playable at the end of the game, is the youngest playable protagonist in a Rockstar game, at 19. However, unlike his dad, Jack still holds the title. Number 57. Funny enough, it took the team a long time to come up with what John Marston actually looked like. They took tons of time to figure out his character first, connecting with him emotionally. His appearance came later. Number 58. As a part of appearance, John Marston shares similar scars with Red Harlow, the protagonist from Red Dead Revolver. Both of their facial scars are based on the scars of Josie Wales from the classic Clint Eastwood 1976 Western, The Outlaw Josie Wales. Number 59. Clint Eastwood was actually approached by Rockstar to play John Marston, but he ended up turning it down. They also asked Robert Duvall and Robert Redford if they were interested, but they turned it down as well. Number 60. Bill Paxton was also offered the role, but wasn't available because he was busy working on the HBO show Big Love. Wiedoff says that he believes part of the reason he got the role was because he sounded like Paxton. Number 61. Red Dead Redemption actually has a Bill Paxton reference. If John Marston is reloading and gets attacked by an animal in the process, he may shout, "Game over, man! Game over!" That's Bill Paxton's famous line from Aliens. Number 62. Of course, Red Dead Redemption is rife with Clint Eastwood references. For instance, there's a tombstone that reads Cowboy of No Name, a reference to Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name from the Dollars trilogy of spaghetti westerns directed by Sergio Leone. Number 63. Red Dead Redemption also has an in-game achievement called More Than a Fistful that's granted when players earn more than $10,000. This is a reference to A Fistful of Dollars, the first of the Dollars trilogy. Number 64. You can even occasionally hear a longtime Western reference as you kill enemies along John Marston's adventure. Sometimes, defeated enemies will let out the Wilhelm scream. You've heard it in tons of movies, including Star Wars, but the Wilhelm scream first appeared in the 1951 Western, Distant Drums. Number 65. Because Red Dead Redemption has such a large scope, Rockstar had different teams write different dialogue types. For example, one team focused on the dialogue of the main story, while another worked on what passers-by in the world would say. Number 66. This is nothing new for Rockstar. They've been using that kind of dialogue workflow since Vice City back in 2002. Number 67. At first, Houser was concerned about writing dialogue in such a different time period. He was more used to writing contemporary Grand Theft Auto style dialogue. Number 68. Ultimately, he and the other writers found a sweet spot, especially when it came to cursing. While they certainly tried to pare down the cursing compared to GTA, they still ultimately threw a few swears in there when they felt it was appropriate. Number 69. Even so, John Marston curses less than a majority of modern Rockstar protagonists. During the game's story, he only drops the F-bomb 3 times, and rarely says it outside of that. Number 70. To try and keep things period accurate, Rockstar created a style guide for all writers to follow. The guide wasn't movies, but authentic sayings and speech from the time that the team had researched. Number 71. Of course, the team still found ways to give Red Dead Redemption that classic Rockstar goofiness, playing off period-accurate stuff like the Sears catalog, patented medicines, and snake oil salesman. Number 72. Certain characters are actually based on historical figures. For example, Edgar Ross is based on Charles Joseph Bonaparte, Napoleon Bonaparte's great-nephew and U.S. Attorney General under Teddy Roosevelt. Number 73. Other characters were inspired by historical figures such as outlaws Frank James and Pearl Hart, as well as the infamous frontier hitman Tom Horn. Number 74. All of Red Dead Redemption's performances were directed by Rod Edge. Rockstar brought him on for both vocal and motion capture. Number 75. All the motion capture for the game was recorded in a studio in Santa Monica, California. Number 76. While John Marston claims the spotlight, he's hardly the only major player on the frontier. Bill Williamson is played by Steve J. Palmer. Number 77. Palmer first auditioned for the role in December 2008. Sure enough, he heard back with the good news the next month. Number 78. And where there's smoke, there's fire. And where there's John Marston and Bill Williamson, you know Dutch Vanderlinde must be close by. He's played by Benjamin Byron Davis. Davis also played Nastas. Number 79. Davis actually auditioned by reading lines for Drew McFarlane, owner of the McFarlane Ranch at the start of the game. Number 80. To play Dutch, Davis based his voice on Osborne Crawl, a character he also played in a short film called Black Eyed Sue. Number 81. At one point in development, the team considered letting the player decide whether to kill Dutch or let him live, but ultimately scrapped the idea as it gave Dutch more agency as a villain. Number 82. If you listen close as you play Red Dead Redemption, you may recognize a few other familiar voices. Fred Armisen actually plays a pharmacist. He would return for Red Dead Redemption 2 as a presenter at the theater in Saint-Denis. Number 83. Also, Walter Jones's voice is one you can hear as you walk among the world's general crowds. You know him as the Black Power Ranger from the original run of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Number 84. Musically, Red Dead Redemption is one of the first games in Rockstar's catalog to feature an original score. Many of the previous Rockstar games, largely GTA, heavily relied on licensed music to fill the soundscape of their worlds. Number 85. The music in Red Dead Redemption was composed by Bill Elm and Woody Jackson. They were brought on to do the music in 2008. Number 86. Over 15 months, the two collaborated on 200 different tracks for the game. Number 87. While researching music for the game, Woody Jackson realized that there was no distinct sound for 1911. No distinct Western sound, at least. Number 88. So he was forced to look elsewhere, namely the film scoring of famous spaghetti western composer Ennio Morricone. Morricone famously wrote the scores for each entry of the Dollars trilogy. Number 89. Rockstar also consulted longtime western musicians and instrumentalists like Tommy Morgan. Morgan had played harmonica in westerns for over 60 years and played some on Red Dead Redemption tracks as well. Number 90. Writing the score was one thing, but incorporating the music into the game was a completely different task unto itself. Elm found the challenge daunting at first and needed a way to make it feel seamless. Number 91. To solve this issue, most of the game's tracks are written in the key of A minor and at 130 beats per minute. That way, each track would flow into another as part of the game's dynamic soundtrack. Number 92. On the technical side, Red Dead Redemption was rendered and animated in the Rockstar Advanced Game Engine, aka Rage, the same engine used for Grand Theft Auto 4 and a number of other Rockstar titles. Number 93. Rage was actually first created by a division of Rockstar San Diego and was originally used in 2006 for Rockstar Games Presents Table Tennis. Number 94. Rage isn't doing all the lifting though. Red Dead Redemption also integrated the engines Euphoria and Bullet for additional animations and environmental rendering. Euphoria was specifically used for character performances. Number 95. One challenge was the environment itself. Rockstar was used to designing cities, environments with lots of straight lines and angles that were easy to make look believable compared to Red Dead Redemption's winding, natural environments. Number 96. Mechanically, Rockstar looked to build off the core shooting gameplay featured in Red Dead Revolver. They ended up keeping the Deadeye mechanic as well as dueling, but just about everything else was scaled up to more traditional Rockstar fare. Number 97. The guns in the game are based on guns from real life. Some even share the same name as their originators, like the LeMat revolver, the Mauser pistol based on the Mauser M712 Schnelfer, and the Henry repeater based on the 1860 Henry rifle. Number 98. However, others have more generic names. The Cattleman revolver is based on the Colt single-action army, the semi-automatic pistol is based on the Borchardt C93, and the bolt-action rifle is based on the Krag Jorgensen rifle. Number 99. To make horses more realistic, Rockstar used a Hollywood stunt horse named Blanco for motion capture, recording its movements to to implement in the game. Number 100. They also filmed tons of footage of the horse with the rider on it too, a longtime stunt rider and horse expert. The rider had never worked with Blanco before Red Dead Redemption, but the two hit it off and formed a bond quickly. Number 101. However, there was a bit of trouble during the mocap sessions. The mocap team regularly used gestures to communicate during film sessions. Turns out, one gesture was the same gesture used to make Blanco rear, so the horse accidentally reared back a number of times during sessions. Number 102. While only one horse was filmed, Red Dead Redemption includes a number of different kinds of horses, like Buckskin, Frisian, and Appaloosa. The core breed they based the horse model on was the Mustang. Number 103. Red Dead Redemption was released in North America on May 18th, 2010, and internationally on May 21st. The release date was pushed back from original North America and international release dates of April 27th and 30th, respectively. Number 104. Post-launch, Red Dead received a number of DLC expansions. At the time, Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick said that the DLC was designed to keep players from ditching the game after they finished it. The company was trying to curb the sales of used games. Number 105. To that end, the DLC was released quickly after the game's release. Outlaws to the End, Legends and Killers, and Liars and Cheats released in June, August, and September, respectively. All added new features to multiplayer. Number 106. Arguably the most famous of Red Dead Redemption's DLC was Undead Nightmare. Released on October 16th, 2010, just in time for Halloween, Undead Nightmare features an all-new, non-canon single-player campaign set during a zombie apocalypse. Number 107. Despite Red Dead Redemption's success, this game has never received an official PC port. To this day, it's the only Rockstar open-world game not to receive one. Of course, while Red Dead Redemption brings John Marston's story to a close, Red Dead Redemption 2 opens it and so much more right back up again. But we've already been down that dusty road before, so make sure to check out our Red Dead 2 107 facts if you're interested. For a few facts more, make sure you subscribe to the Leaderboard for more 107s and the like.